Hey guys, welcome back to Buzzer to Buzzer. Alright guys, you've probably noticed that we haven't really talked about the whole situation going on with our hometown team, the Chicago Bears. We haven't really elaborated on our thoughts in the past week's reaction video and haven't really talked about the quarterback situation. Well, it's because today we'll be talking about all the drama which has unfolded, but not alone. We will be welcoming in two of the hosts from the Bear Down podcast, which is a talk show all about the Chicago Bears. So without any further ado, let's get them on the line, guys. All right, guys. Join me in welcoming Chris and Jaylen from the Bear Down podcast. All links will be in the description below. Firstly, Chris and Jaylen, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having us. Really appreciate it. I feel like I didn't get the memo of a football field in the background, but I guess a college dorm is fine.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually trying to do that, but I couldn't find it because we don't use it. But like Chris said, thank you guys for having us on. We really appreciate it. Let's talk some football.
Sure, man. That's what we're here for. Let's get down to it. So the reason why we're all here is to talk about our hometown team, that being of the Chicago Bears. Now, guys, firstly, let's get started by talking about last week's event. That being the game which was obviously against the Atlanta Falcons, in which, although the Bears did end up winning 30-26, making a comeback, always making us wait till the last minute on the edge of our seats, coming down from a deficit of 16 points, scoring 20 unanswered points in that fourth quarter. Although we came away with the win, guys, it came at a cost. That cost being our quarterback, who we believed in, traded up for that second position. He benched, and then in came Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles. So that's what I want to get started with, asking you guys your thoughts about all of last week's events with the game comeback and the whole quarterback situation.
Yeah, I'll start. I will be the only one in this call I know who will say I like the move of Foles coming in. I was fine with Trubisky getting another shot personally. I thought it was a premeditated decision to bring in Nick Foles, and I think now seeing that Trubisky was benched when he led us essentially to a 2-0, possibly even 3-0 record by putting up enough points on the scoreboard that he was benched, I think it was obviously premeditated. I don't know if you keep Trubisky in that game against Atlanta if you win it. I like the move to Foles. You know, he's never played a full season in his career. He played 13 games in 2013. So we'll see if he's able to pull it out. Indianapolis is another tough one, but you have to respect what he was able to do in Atlanta. I think even when he went in a couple of days ago, everyone thought the game was still over. We saw Matt Ryan, Russell Gage, Calvin Ridley taking over in that one. Even Todd Gurley had a good day on the ground. So you have to give kudos to Foles for bringing us back in that one, and I think it was going to be tough not to start him after it. Once again, tough task ahead of us, but I believe in Foles. I think we're going to see Matt Nagy do some things that he's never done before with Foles. Obviously, he's someone who worked with Nagy in 2016 and 15 when he was in Kansas City, worked with Frank Reich, the coach of the Indianapolis Colts, worked with Doug Peterson, worked with Andy Reid, that Andy Reid tree. I think Nagy's going to be able to get a lot more creative with Foles, and I think overall, it allows the offense to get up 7 to 14 more points a game.
Yeah, Chris knows I was pushing heavy for Mitchell to succeed coming into the season. Even Chris can admit, him and Parth, our other co-hosts, were doubting Mitchell Trubisky, and coming in and being the starting quarterback from week one. I had a lot of high expectations for him. He didn't meet those coming in, after week 3. I still don't like how Nagy benched him. He did miss a couple throws in that first half. He missed that deep ball to Anthony Miller, and he threw that bad pick, that was intended for Jimmy Graham. And after that, he basically got benched. I didn't really like that. I wasn't a big fan of Foles when we traded for him. I see why we did, because he is familiar with Matt Nagy's offense. They were counted together in Kansas City, but he wasn't the starter. Alex Smith was, but he knows the offense. He kind of showed it in the second half. The offense did look very fluid with Nick Foles in and not Mitchell Trubisky. So I want to see what Nick Foles does against this Colts defense. It's rated number 1 in the NFL. So if he can basically show what he did in that second half, then I will be comfortable with him at quarterback.
Yeah, well, and Chris, so before the season even started, we used to talk about the Bears, and we also said that when the Bears were thinking of starting Trubisky or the whole QB situation, it was a PR stunt, a PR move by the Bears. And like their whole game plan before the head of the season was that they would start Nick Foles eventually, but they just wanted to see if Trubisky would like get them wins. So like I wouldn't say, at least personally, that this was completely unexpected, but like it was definitely a shock on the field, like that game decision.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to happen when it happened. I agree with Jaylen. I think it was kind of a little bit of a bush league move when it did happen. But, once again, I think it was premeditated. You look at Foles, he's got familiarity with John DeFilippo with their time in Jacksonville. He spent time with Bill Lazor in Philadelphia and obviously Nagy in Kansas City. I think ever since we traded for him, it made sense. But, yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if it was essentially a PR move because the Bears could have gone out there and gotten someone like an Andy Dalton, like a Cam Newton, who we see thriving now with the New England Patriots. But, yeah, I think it was going to happen soon. That might be the first time a quarterback was ever benched after having an undefeated record. But I'm looking forward to this next week. I think the Colts are in for a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it was a PR move either. I really feel like that the only reason Mitchell Trubisky started from week one was because of Pace. That was Pace guy. That was the only quarterback Pace has drafted in his tenure with the Chicago Bears. We traded up to get him from 3 to 2, obviously. So I don't think this was a PR move, but this is basically Pace's last shot at saying that I want to prove myself right and why I traded up and drafted this guy. But with Foles as well, that's basically Nagy's guy. I think Nagy wanted to start Foles from week one, but Pace is the GM and that's Nagy's boss, and he wants to still give Mitchell a shot to prove that he can be our quarterback.
So, Jaylen, you talk about it being Pace's guy. I completely agree with that situation. I mean, he brings Foles into the middle of the game. I think that's part of what the premeditated situation Chris was talking about. If Ryan Pace had decided, if Matt Nagy had decided before the game that he was going to start Nick Foles, there's going to be some interference from the head office. Hey, Mitchell Trubisky's my guy. He's 2-0 right now. Why are you benching him? He's shown that he can win the game.
They had to do it in the middle of the game.
And so when they're down in that situation, and now that's a big gamble too by Matt Nagy, because now if Nick Foles comes in and say he makes the deficit worse, it's kind of a gamble that he has to take. But now that Nick Foles came in, won that game for them, Ryan Pace has no say in whether or not Nick Foles starts that game forward game against the Indianapolis Colts.
Right, exactly, Harsh. I mean, you can't go back to Mitchell Trubisky now. You just can't. I mean, we saw the way he performed. He only had one good quarter against the Lions and then one good half against the Giants. Nick Foles came in and did the job. And going back to Mitchell Trubisky would be a terrible move for the Bears. So I think Foles is going to be the starter for the whole season now, probably.
Exactly. Bringing some numbers here, guys. Nick Foles did come in with only a couple minutes left with that third quarter. He threw for 188 yards, 16 out of 29 passes were caught, and 3 quick touchdowns. Especially, that was a nice touchdown, seeing that Allen Robinson and that connection finally being able to be made. And it's just crazy to think how all the events transpired. Out of all the chances Matt Nagy had, doing it at that moment, putting so much pressure on Nick Foles. I mean, and he played up to the moment, scoring 20 points in that fourth quarter. I think it's safe to say that Mr. Trubisky probably would not have been able to do that. However, if Nick Foles couldn't have lived up to the hype, I feel like Matt Nagy would have been in for a lot of scrutiny after the game, especially the head management. Boy, would that have been a PR nightmare, to say the least. However, this whole quarterback situation begs the question. Guys, 2 years back in the draft, we traded up for Mr. Trubisky to that number 2 spot. We forego the option of selecting Pat Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, and we took Mr. Trubisky as our main guy. And although it was mainly Ryan Pace's decision, not listening to John Fox, all that upper-level management, all that discussions which they had, the question has to be asked that, is this bench justified? I mean, Mr. Trubisky was off to a 2-0 start in the eyes of our fans. Before this game, we were thinking he's doing great. Do we think that we should have given hope after these 2 years with Trubisky?
Man, that's a tough one. I had a lot more hope with him coming into 2019 than I did 2020. I knew that he needed to be spot on coming into this season. And I think right off the bat, you said it. He only played a good quarter against the Lions, a good half against the Giants. That wasn't the consistency that I thought we needed to see out of him. We talked about needing to come into this Atlanta game, Jaylen and I, needing to come into this Atlanta game and playing a good 4 quarters of football. And I don't think we saw one good quarter of football from him against Atlanta. And I said it earlier, I don't think we would have won that game if we kept him in. So personally speaking, with how I saw it, I think, maybe the benching was necessary. I don't know if it was done properly. And kudos to Nagy for taking the gamble when he did, because you mentioned it probably wasn't going to happen between games because of the upper management, and Foles had to come in and show out, and he did exactly that. But I think it was justified. Do I think it was done in the appropriate manner? Not so much.
I definitely don't. Well, I don't think it was justified in the middle of the game. If we kept Trubisky in and we didn't come back, and then Nagy was looking into starting Nick Foles for this game, I wouldn't be upset with that. But him benching him in the middle of the game, I don't think that was really justified. But if he would have kept him in and we still would have lost, and him bringing up the idea to start Nick Foles for this game, I think that would I wouldn't be upset with that, because that's a terrible defense. We should have put on more than 10 points in the first half on that defense. They were giving us a lot of opportunities too as well.
Yeah. Also, just in general with that decision, I just think that these 3 games, they shouldn't be like this, nail biters. The Bears should get easy dubs for all these 3 games. When they verse the Giants, the Falcons, and the Lions, the 3 of the teams who people don't consider great teams. I think this should not even be this close every game. And the fact that it is, something's wrong. And obviously Matt Nagy knows that. So that's why he made the move he did. I don't agree with that at all, being so sudden, abrupt in that fashion, in that manner, in what he did. But I think it was definitely justifiable, and it was a move that they were going to take no matter what this season.
Yeah, Abi, you bring up a good point. In a sense, the 3-0 start, I don't know if y'all are going to agree with this, but it can be considered an inflated record. I mean, the teams which they played for these first 3 games, they're a total of 1-8 when you accumulate all their records. I mean, beating a hapless Lions team and a Falcons team now, games like Abi, you said, should have been easy to win. However, considering all this, let's talk about next week's game, which is most likely going to put the Bears to the real test. That being against the Indianapolis Colts. I believe it is a home game, and guys, the Chicago Bears are 3-0 for the first time since the year 2013, and have the chance to go 4-0 for the first time since 2006 when they played the Indianapolis Colts in the Super Bowl. Some similarities going on here, looks like, with this upcoming game. However, guys, as mentioned, the Bears are playing a really tough defense, ranked number 1 in the NFL for total points, with the Colts only allowing an average of 15 points in the previous 3 games. So let me get started with asking Chris and Jaylen, what do you guys think about this upcoming game? Can we get the job done with Foles as our main guy?
I think they can. You take a look at who the Colts have played, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Minnesota Vikings, who have been hobbled, and the New York Jets, who are now 0-4. That puts the Vikings opponents at 1-9 after the Jets fell last night on Thursday Night Football to the Denver Broncos, which was an interesting game. But I do think the Bears can do it. I mean, you take a look at the Colts defense. They've allowed just under 245 yards per game. The Bears' defense a little bit concerning, allowing almost 400 per game. I think the offensive line for the Bears is going to have to stand up this week against guys like DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard. Also on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to have a tough task. That Colts offensive line, very good with Quentin Nelson, Anthony Costanzo, Braden Smith, amongst others. I think if you can shut down the Colts running attack, we saw Marlon Mack go down in week 1 with a torn Achilles. They're going to be relying a lot on Jonathan Taylor. I was actually just covering the game last week for my school's television station, so I actually got to go to Lucas Oil Stadium to see that. That was an interesting one when they play the Jets. But they're a team that relies heavy on the run. Rivers has been fine when he's throwing the ball. I actually say he's been above average when he's throwing the ball. But that team wants to rely on the run as much as possible, and we've seen a gaping hole in the Bears' run defense. Moving Bilal Nichols seems like it was a move that on paper made sense, but seeing it play out, not so much so. It's going to be a tough task, don't get me wrong, but I also believe the Colts are missing TJ Carey this week, their slot cornerback, who has been impeccable to start the season. So also hobbled at the wide receiver position, no Paris Campbell, no Michael Pittman Jr. I think it's going to be a tough one. I think the game will be won in the trenches. And I think as much as this is this is the toughest matchup that the Bears will have, I also think it's going to be a tough matchup for the Indianapolis Colts, who haven't faced the best opponents thus far. It's going to be a tough one. I think the offense will see some more consistency with Foles, and I think the Bears slightly pull it out.
Chris basically took everything I was going to say, so I'm going to keep it short. But, we have to stop the run game. Something that we haven't really been good at in the first 3 weeks of the season. We let Adrian Peterson go for almost 100 yards on us. I'm very confident that if Saquon Barkley and Sally Taylor's ACL, that he would have had a good game. And then last week, Todd Gurley had a very good game against us. So without Marlon Mack, they still have Jonathan Taylor, who they drafted with their second-round pick. He had a good game against the Vikings. If they're able to run the ball on us consistently and, waste clock and control time of possession, I don't think that's going to be very good for us. They have a very good offensive line with Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, Anthony Constarzo, or something like that. Yeah, Ryan Kelly. They have a very good offensive line. Their tight end production has been very well from Wally Cox as well. Phillip Rivers hasn't really had to do much in the first couple of games of the season. Their defense has basically took over these last 2 games, and where he basically just had to game manage. So if we're able to stop the run and put the ball in Phillip Rivers' hands, he's a gunslinger. He's going to throw the ball. He's going to give us opportunity to come down with turnovers and put the ball in Nick Foles' hands with the offense that I don't think the Colts are going to be able to game plan against. We might see plays from Matt Nagy that we haven't seen since 2018 with Mitchell Trubisky, just because he's confident in Nick Foles' ability to stretch the ball down the field as well. So I definitely feel like we have a good chance against the Colts. This is the toughest opponent we've played so far, and I think this is the Colts' toughest opponent they played so far as well. I definitely think it's going to be a good game. This game will definitely give us our identity if we're pretenders or contenders for the playoffs.
Pressure. We have to get pressure on Phillip Rivers. I mean, I know their offensive line is good, but if we can, phase Phillip Rivers, he becomes a turnover machine. And obviously, we know our defense likes to capitalize on turnovers. And I think, the Bears play really good complementary football. When we get turnovers, our offense does really well, as we saw in the Atlanta game. And so I think that's going to be the key to winning this game. If we can force Phillip Rivers to turn the ball over, I think we can pull this one out.
Yeah, this is a really interesting matchup because it's a key test for both teams. Both teams have played subpar teams for the first 3 games of the season. And, to show that, okay, we're 3-0, you're 2-1, we're supposed to be good. Let's see who's the better team. And I think it also comes down to how the Bears offense finally opens up their playbook. Matt Nagy always has had a smaller playbook because of Mitchell Trubisky's inability to throw the deep ball. And I think now that he has Nick Foles as an option, he has more options for deep threats. And it's sort of a test to see, okay, is this Colts defense legit? And is Nick Foles the quarterback for the future of this team?
Also just to add on a little bit, well, been focusing on like their QB situation, but there's a receiver on the Bears, Allen Robinson, who I think with Trubisky was like not a wasted potential, but Trubisky couldn't utilize him enough. And I think with Foles, I think he can utilize Allen Robinson, as we saw in the last game, really well. And I think Allen Robinson is going to have like a lot better games from going on the season, just a lot doing better, getting those better catches, getting those deep passes, what Harsh said, because Foles can throw deep. And I think that's like a key part of their offense, especially now that since Tariq Cohen's gone.
The defensive line of the Colts is pretty stacked. Like Chris, you mentioned, they got DeForest Buckner, Justin Houston, also a Pro Bowler. They got some nice pieces. However, we've seen if any place we've seen some consistency, it's not at the quarterback position, but it's sort of at the offensive line position. With the line of scrimmage working well and the pass protection being all right this year to start off the game. Are the Colts a different team than the team we played in the first 3 games? For sure. However, the main key takeaway, which I think is going to matter with this upcoming game, is going to be our pass rush. Like Arjen, you mentioned, if we can get Phillip Rivers, a veteran quarterback, if we can get him panicking, he usually does not perform well under that deep pressure, and we can get the ball rolling not only in offense now with Nick Foles, a much more accurate and person who can throw the deep ball to receivers like Allen Robinson. But for sure, this game is going to prove which team is the real deal. And Jaylen, I like what you said. It's going to prove if we're a pretender or a contender.
Definitely. If we want to go, we need to start 4-0. I was talking about Chris. I don't remember the last time. We actually won the first game of the season or the second game consistently. I'm just happy the Bears are undefeated. A lot of people say that, we really don't deserve to be 3-0, but, we showed that even when we're down, this team is not going to quit. We came back from 2 16-point deficits in the fourth quarter, and we're able to win those games. I'm very excited for how this team performs, maybe with a reliable quarterback and Nick Foles. I hate saying that, but, I definitely want to see how this offense is when Nick Foles and the play calling as well, because Matt Nagy has probably not used most of his playbook just because of Mitchell Trubisky's lack of, deep accuracy or accuracy with the deep ball. and his ability to not read the defense and stuff like that. So definitely excited for this game. I really can't wait.
Yeah, finish off what Jaylen was saying about how this team is resilient and how they keep coming back. I think a lot of it is attributed to Khalil Mack's offseason goal of becoming a more vocal leader for this team. You've seen it in the first 3 games that, when we were down against Detroit, he gathered the whole defense there and tried getting them riled up, getting that, okay, we need to get our game together. We need to put our offense in a situation to win this game. You could see it after Mitchell Trubisky got benched. He went over to him and, consoled him and told him, hey, like, we're still a team and we're all in this together. Or even after the Calvin Ridley touchdown at the beginning of the game, he was on his cornerbacks. He was making sure that everyone's held accountable. And I think his leadership that he's taken a greater role in this season has definitely attributed to that.
For sure, man. This game is going to prove a lot of things, not only for our Bears team in terms of can Nick Foles carry out the job, get a win against a good defensive team like the Colts, and prove to have some more consistency than Mr. Trubisky. And also it can be a statement win for the Colts. But as always, one thing is certain, that we at Buzzer2Buzzer will be covering all the games, and so will Chris and Jaylen at their Bear Down podcast. Once again, Chris, Jaylen, loved having you guys out here. Would love to have you guys in the future and talk more about our hometown team or any other sport. But that is it. That is all for today. Thank you guys, and see you.